For years, I was the silent supporter financially and emotionally while my family took me for granted. I came back home hoping to reconnect, but instead, I uncovered secrets, lies, and betrayal. When I finally walked away, everything they depended on began to collapse. This is my story of breaking free from a toxic family, reclaiming my independence, and finding peace on my own terms. If you've ever felt trapped by expectations, guilt, or emotional manipulation, this story might speak to you. You never truly understand loneliness until you're surrounded by your family, yet feel utterly alone. After years of chasing success in the bustling chaos of New York City, I, Emma Carter, finally found myself standing back in the warmth of Californian sunlight, a warmth that somehow failed to reach my heart. My luggage felt heavier with every step toward the house I'd grown up in, each stride resonating with memories both sweet and bitter. I had convinced myself that leaving behind the endless stress of freelance data analysis and returning to my family would heal the wounds I'd collected along the way. However, I couldn't shake off the unease lurking beneath my hopeful facade. The moment I crossed the threshold of my childhood home, it struck me with piercing clarity, the indifferent glance from my mother, the forced smiles from my brother Alex, and his wife, Jessica's superficial greetings. This reunion felt hollow, as if my absence had altered their perception of me irrevocably. A silent whisper echoed in my heart. Maybe coming back was a mistake. As days blurred into weeks, I discovered my attempts at reconnecting were continually overshadowed by subtle dismissals and overt favoritism. Alex remained the golden child despite his apparent inertia, and Jessica's frequent complaints about finances became an expected refrain, even as my financial contributions quietly kept the household afloat. The invisible burden I carried weighed heavily, unnoticed and unappreciated by the very people I sought validation from. Yet, amid this turmoil, a faint resolve ignited within me, fueled by the uncomfortable realization that home wasn't the sanctuary I'd imagined, but merely another battlefield, cloaked in familiar smiles. Reality settled in with painful precision. Each interaction began to erode the fragile hope I had held on to, slowly revealing truths I'd been blind to, truths I refused to see. My mother's favoritism became increasingly obvious in every conversation. Casual remarks praising Alex's non-existent job prospects stung deeper each time, highlighting the stark contrast in how she viewed me. One evening, overhearing a quiet yet tense conversation between Alex and Jessica, I paused silently behind the kitchen door. My heart pounded as Jessica's voice carried clearly, her tone casual yet disturbingly familiar, complaining again about the endless lack of money, subtly hinting at my supposed selfishness for not contributing more. "She earns plenty from that freelance stuff," Jessica murmured sharply. "She just keeps it all to herself." My stomach knotted, a flush of anger rising to my cheeks. Yet, beneath that anger lingered profound disappointment, a recognition of betrayal from those I'd naively trusted. My silent support, my quiet sacrifices all disregarded, all twisted into something ugly and selfish. The cracks in my illusion widened further when, later that week, I stumbled upon paperwork Jessica had carelessly left on the dining table government forms, confirming her monthly unemployment benefits. Precisely $1,300 each month. The hypocrisy hit me like a cold wave. The very people accusing me of greed and selfishness were secretly benefiting while still leaning heavily on my generosity. That night, as I lay in bed staring into the darkness, sleep eluded me. My thoughts churned restlessly, painfully clear. I couldn't live like this anymore. I knew then I had reached a turning point. Something deep within me had finally snapped, shattered irreversibly by the truth. In the days following my unsettling discoveries, my perspective shifted drastically. Each conversation, each subtle request for money, seemed laden with hidden agendas. Jessica's passive-aggressive comments about needing groceries or gas money felt like sharp needles, each one driving deeper into my patience and tolerance. My mother's constant praise for Alex became unbearable, particularly as I observed him lazing around the house, detached from the reality of his unemployment. I found myself increasingly resentful, forced to bite back sharp retorts whenever I saw my own hard-earned money frivolously spent or carelessly disregarded. One afternoon, returning home earlier than expected, I overheard Jessica on the phone, laughing casually as she discussed plans for an extravagant weekend getaway. My heart tightened painfully as she detailed expenses, casually mentioning that she'd figure something out, implicitly expecting my financial intervention yet again. I stood frozen, realization washing over me like ice water. I wasn't just unappreciated, I was being deliberately manipulated, used solely for financial gain. This revelation etched itself deeply within me, solidifying my resolve to reclaim control of my life. The uncomfortable truth was undeniable. I needed to confront the exploitation directly or risk losing myself completely in the shadows of their selfishness. Determined to confront the manipulations head-on, I discreetly began observing my family's behaviors with a clearer, more analytical eye. My professional skills as a data analyst had honed my ability to piece together patterns from scattered clues, a skill I never thought I'd need at home. One evening, Jessica carelessly left her laptop open in the living room. My curiosity, fueled by weeks of mistrust, got the better of me. A quick glance revealed more than I bargained for, emails detailing her steady unemployment payments coupled with her repeated pleas to relatives and friends for additional financial assistance. My heart sank deeper with each email read, confirming the extent of her manipulative schemes. "What are you doing?" Jessica's cold voice startled me from behind. I turned slowly, heart pounding, confronting her icy glare with an unexpected surge of defiance. "Looking for clarity," I replied steadily, my voice surprisingly firm despite my shaking hands. Jessica's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I suggest you mind your own business, Emma." For the first time, her threat didn't intimidate me. It clarified everything. Standing there, facing her openly hostile stance, I understood one thing clearly. The illusion of family solidarity had been irrevocably shattered, replaced now by a bitter truth that demanded action. Determined to confront the manipulations head-on, I discreetly began observing my family's behaviors with a clearer, more analytical eye. My professional skills as a data analyst had honed my ability to piece together patterns from scattered clues, a skill I never thought I'd need at home. One evening, Jessica carelessly left her laptop open in the living room. My curiosity, fueled by weeks of mistrust, got the better of me. A quick glance revealed more than I bargained for. Emails detailing her steady unemployment payments, coupled with her repeated pleas to relatives and friends for additional financial assistance. My heart sank deeper with each email read, confirming the extent of her manipulative schemes. "What are you doing?" Jessica's cold voice startled me from behind. I turned slowly, heart pounding, confronting her icy glare with an unexpected surge of defiance. "Looking for clarity," I replied steadily, my voice surprisingly firm despite my shaking hands. Jessica's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I suggest you mind your own business, Emma." For the first time, her threat didn't intimidate me. It clarified everything. Standing there, facing her openly hostile stance, I understood one thing clearly. The illusion of family solidarity had been irrevocably shattered, replaced now by a bitter truth that demanded action. That evening, the house was unusually quiet. The calm after the storm, perhaps, but for me, the storm inside was only just beginning. Sitting alone at the small desk by the window in my room, I watched the California sun slowly sinking behind the trees, painting the sky a burnt orange shade I once found comforting. Tonight, the glow felt strangely oppressive. In front of me was my laptop, its familiar humming the only sound accompanying my heavy thoughts. My mind kept replaying Jessica's expression earlier, the panic in her eyes shifting rapidly to hostility as she scrambled to explain away her lies, accusing me of snooping rather than acknowledging her deceit. Her deflection left me feeling more isolated than ever. The betrayal stung deeply, a bitter confirmation of what I'd refused to see clearly before. My own blindness had enabled their abuse. I had always rationalized my contributions as the price for familial harmony. Deep down, I knew that was a lie I kept telling myself. My financial support had never earned me respect or gratitude, only convenient silence punctuated by their endless demands. And today, Jessica's actions finally exposed the cold truth I'd been avoiding. A soft knock at the door snapped me from my thoughts. "Emma?" It was my mother's voice, calm yet oddly distant. "Dinner's ready." "I'll be down in a minute," I replied quietly, barely recognizing my own voice, devoid of emotion. Downstairs, I sat at the familiar dining table, silently observing each family member. Mother, comfortably detached, plating salad as if nothing had occurred. Alex, avoiding eye contact, mechanically scooping mashed potatoes onto his plate. Jessica, tense and visibly irritated, casting fleeting glances my way. Her eyes filled with unspoken accusation. The ticking of the wall clock seemed to grow louder with every passing second, punctuating the thick silence that hung heavily between us. "Everything okay, Emma?" Mother finally asked, her tone slightly accusing as though I were the one responsible for tonight's strained atmosphere. I paused, taking a slow breath before answering. My words came out measured, calm, but resolute. "Actually, things aren't okay," I began, feeling their attention tighten around me. "I've been thinking. It's probably time I move out and start focusing fully on my own life again." My mother's fork clattered onto her plate. Jessica froze mid-chew. Alex shot a quick glance at Jessica, panic evident in his eyes. "Move out?" Mother's voice carried disbelief. "Is this some impulsive reaction because of your little disagreement with Jessica?" "No." I shook my head calmly, locking eyes with her. "It's much more than that. I've been avoiding reality for too long. I thought coming back here would make things better for everyone. Instead, I've only encouraged dependency and resentment. It's unhealthy, especially for me." Jessica cleared her throat nervously, forcing a laugh. "Emma, surely you're overreacting. Family has ups and downs. There's no reason." "Enough, Jessica." My voice sharpened slightly, startling even me with its firmness. "You know exactly what this is about. Let's not pretend." The table returned to silence, colder now, edged with discomfort and unspoken grievances. I saw in their expressions a quiet recognition of a truth they'd chosen to ignore. Without me, their fragile thought of comfort would quickly collapse. Later that night, alone again in my room, I started packing clothes neatly folded, laptop securely placed into its case. With each item packed, I felt lighter, clearer. Every movement was decisive, therapeutic, reaffirming my new direction. Pausing, I looked around the room. It was the same small, familiar space from my childhood, yet tonight, it felt oddly foreign. I understood clearly now. Staying here had always been about maintaining an illusion, both theirs and mine. Leaving wasn't merely an act of rebellion. It was my quiet declaration of independence, of reclaiming the dignity I'd unknowingly relinquished. As I zipped up the last bag, a profound relief settled into my chest. The uncertainty ahead didn't frighten me anymore. Instead, it excited me, reigniting a strength I'd forgotten I possessed. Tomorrow would bring a fresh start, one I was finally ready to embrace wholeheartedly. The morning I left, no one came downstairs. I moved quietly, careful not to let the old staircase creak under the weight of my suitcase. There was something poetic in the silence, like the house itself had nothing left to say to me. I paused at the door for a moment, listening for footsteps, for one last sign that someone might stop me. Nothing. I stepped outside. The air was crisp, the kind that smelled of morning dew and asphalt. As I loaded my car, I didn't feel triumphant, just clear. For the first time in months, maybe years, my mind wasn't a battlefield. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I'd signed a month-to-month lease on a small studio apartment on the east side of town. Nothing glamorous, just a converted garage with mismatched tile, a leaky faucet, and a cracked bathroom mirror. But it was mine. My space. My rules. The first night there, I cried. Not out of regret, but from the sheer weight of everything: relief, grief, exhaustion. I curled up on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes I was too tired to unpack. There was no one to hear me, and for once, that was okay. The solitude didn't feel like punishment. It felt earned. In the days that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding. I picked up freelance contracts again, dusted off old client leads, cleaned up my website, and posted regularly on LinkedIn. I worked late into the night, fueled by instant coffee and the quiet hum of purpose. It was hard, yes, but not the kind of hard that drains you. It was the kind that rebuilds you. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at the empty chair across from me and wondering if I had made the right choice. The old Emma would have texted Jessica to make peace, or called Mom to explain herself. But that version of me had disappeared the moment I closed that front door. One afternoon, I received a text from an old client in Seattle. She had a new startup and needed help with data infrastructure. It was a sizable project, the kind that could anchor me for the next few months. I took it, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was choosing my life, not surviving someone else's. I began forming a rhythm early mornings with soft jazz and black coffee, midday strategy calls, evenings filled with code and quiet. It was far from glamorous, but it was real. And it was mine. Still, the echoes of my family followed me. One night, I passed by a grocery store aisle and saw a woman about my mother's age comparing brands of olive oil. For a moment, I stood frozen her posture. The way she tilted her head. It reminded me so much of Mom that my chest tightened involuntarily. I wondered if she was eating well. If she still bought those overpriced candles she never lit. If she missed me. I missed her, too. But not enough to go back. What I was building now, this life of quiet stability, of effort and intention, was something no one had ever taught me. I'd had to carve it out of years of guilt, silence, and survival. Every invoice I sent, every email I signed off, felt like a brick in the foundation of something real. My own sense of worth. One evening, as I sat reviewing a quarterly dashboard for a client, I caught myself smiling. Not because of the numbers, but because I realized I hadn't thought about pleasing anyone else all day. I wasn't trying to be enough for someone. I was just me. And for the first time in years, that felt like it was enough. It started with a voicemail from the bank. "Hi, Ms. Carter. This is Mary from Redwood Credit Union. We're reaching out regarding the joint savings account ending in 3021. There's been multiple overdraft attempts this week, and we'd like to confirm recent activities with you directly." I froze. That account had been opened years ago, back when I helped Mom refinance the house during her brief health scare. I'd forgotten I was still a co-signer. My name, my credit, still tethered to hers. I hung up and called back immediately, heart sinking with every dial tone. What I found out wasn't just concerning. It was catastrophic. The account had been overdrawn for weeks. Credit cards maxed, multiple bounced checks. I asked the woman on the phone to walk me through the charges. Spa treatments, takeout, home DCOR, a $600 wine subscription. And then came the kicker. "Unemployment deposits to Jessica Carter have stopped since last month," she said casually. "Looks like the claim was flagged and reversed retroactively." I didn't say anything, just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Jessica's scheme had finally caught up with her. And without my financial padding to fall back on, the house of cards was collapsing fast. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Alex. "Hey, weird question. You busy next weekend?" I was wondering if we could maybe catch up. No mention of what happened. No apology, just casual, forced small talk, like he was trying to work his way back in with soft tones and sideways intentions. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Mom called. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Emma," she said quickly, like she was afraid I might hang up. "I know things have been tense, but we could really use your help. The mortgage is behind. Alex is looking for work. Jessica's in a really bad place." I leaned back in my chair. "You want me to bail everyone out again?" No, she said too fast. "It's not like that. I just thought maybe you'd want to, I don't know, support your family. That's what families do." I let the silence hang. Then, when I was supporting this family, no one seemed to consider that I was part of it too. She said nothing. I could hear her breathing, tight and shallow. Maybe crying. Maybe not. She'd cried before, and still watched me pack my bags without saying a word. "We're not doing well, Emma," she whispered. "This house, it's falling apart. The bills, the tension. Robert moved out last week. He says he can't take the pressure anymore." I blinked. "Dad left?" She hesitated. "He's staying at a motel in Santa Rosa. Says he needs space." Plot twist. I hadn't expected that. Of all people, Dad had always been the silent, patient observer. I thought he'd stick it out, that he'd tolerate the mess like he always had. But maybe I underestimated him. Maybe I wasn't the only one who'd had enough. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. The numbers on my screen blurred together. My coffee went cold. The silence wasn't peaceful this time. It was heavy, haunted by the collapse of the world I had once tried so hard to hold together. But here's the thing about silence. It can also be clarifying. I wasn't happy that they were falling apart. That's not the kind of vindication I wanted. I didn't want revenge. I wanted honesty, respect, reciprocity. Things that had never really existed in that house. And now they were paying the price for what they refused to acknowledge. I had made my peace with walking away. They were now being forced to face the cost of never learning how to stand without leaning on someone else. I didn't plan to call him. For most of my life, Dad had been like a background instrument in a song dominated by sharper, louder voices. Present, steady, but rarely heard. He never raised his voice, never challenged Mom, never defended me either. Just quietly there. But that night, after the call with Mom, I found myself scrolling through my contacts until his name appeared. Robert Carter. Simple, unassuming, just like him. I stared at it for a long time. Then I pressed call. He picked up on the second ring. "Emma?" His voice slightly raspy, lower than I remembered, somehow made my chest tighten. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I heard it alone, unfiltered by the noise of our house. "Hey," I said, a little too softly. "I heard you moved out." There was a pause. Not awkward, just full. "I did," he said. "It was time." Silence again. But this time it wasn't cold. It was careful. Gentle. "I'm staying at a small place off Route 12, he added. "Not much, but it's quiet. And mine." I smiled. "That actually sounds perfect." He laughed a short, surprised sound. "It is. For the first time in a long while, I can hear myself think." "I know what that feels like," I said quietly. We talked for almost half an hour. About neutral things, mostly. His motel room, the coffee shop nearby, how he'd started sketching again, something he hadn't done since I was a kid. No blame, no history, just two people rediscovering the language of presence. Before we hung up, he said, "I never told you this, but I always admired how you stood on your own. even when it made things harder for you. I swallowed hard. Thanks, Dad. It wasn't an apology, but it was something real. A few days later, we met at a quiet diner near the edge of town. He was already seated when I arrived, flipping through a worn sketchpad. When he looked up and smiled, there was a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. We talked over black coffee and burnt toast. He told me that he hadn't planned to leave. Not really. But one morning he woke up and realized he didn't recognize the person he'd become. Silent, stagnant, complicit. I stayed too long pretending things were fine. That was my failure, he said. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd spent years trying not to rock the boat, now choosing to swim away from it entirely. Maybe he hadn't protected me before, but maybe he was trying to protect himself now. And maybe, in doing so, he was finally becoming the kind of man I could trust. We didn't say everything that needed to be said. Some things were still too tangled, too raw. But when he slid the check toward himself and said, "Let me take this one," I didn't protest. It wasn't about the meal. It was about him showing up. She showed up at my door on a Wednesday. I recognized the knock before I heard her voice. There was something about the rhythm hesitant, then persistent, that brought a dozen childhood memories flooding back. The way she used to knock on my bedroom door when she wanted something, never when I needed her. I opened it slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just less certain. Her lipstick wasn't perfect. Her blouse wrinkled. A purse clutched too tightly in her hands, like it might steady her. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We stood there for a moment, the quiet stretching between us like glass. I stepped aside. Not an invitation. Just space. She entered my apartment like someone stepping into a stranger's home, which, in a way, she was. The room felt even smaller than usual. Or maybe it was just the weight of everything we hadn't said. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here," she said softly, sitting on the edge of the chair like she didn't quite believe she was allowed to. I stayed standing. "I heard from Alex," she continued. "He said you spoke with your father." I nodded. Briefly. She clasped her hands, fingers tightening with each breath. "I know I've been unfair," she started. "To you. For a long time." I said nothing. I saw what I wanted to see, believed what was easier to believe. About you, about Jessica, about everything. And I let that belief become truth because it helped me avoid looking at myself. That was the first honest thing I'd heard her say in years. She looked up at me, eyes red, but not pleading. "I'm not asking you to come back, or to fix anything. I wanted you to know I see it now. I see you." That hit harder than I expected. All those years of invisibility, of being told I was too sensitive, too cold, too distant. All while handing over my paycheck and swallowing my pride. I walked to the window, needing the air. "I wanted your approval so badly," I said, more to the sky than to her. "And when I realized I'd never get it, I thought maybe your dependence would be enough. That if you needed me, it meant I mattered." A long silence, then her voice, quieter. "You always mattered. I just didn't know how to show it." She stood, but didn't move closer. "I'm in debt," she said simply. "The house might go. Alex and Jessica barely speak to me now. Your father, he's not coming back." I turned to her. Her eyes were glassy but calm. "I'm not here to ask for money, Emma," she added. "I came because I'm scared, and because I finally understand what it means to be alone. I thought you needed us, but we needed you more than we ever admitted." I nodded slowly. "I'm glad you see that now." She exhaled, like something she'd been holding in finally let go. "I'd like to call sometimes, not to ask for anything, just to talk." if that's okay. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see a woman to fight or to save. I saw someone trying. Late, yes, but trying. That's okay, I said quietly. We can talk, but I won't carry you anymore. I can't. I understand. She walked toward the door, paused. You're stronger than all of us, she said. I wish I'd told you that sooner. Then she left. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just stood there for a while, letting the silence fill me again. This time, not like a void, but a truth. A boundary had been drawn, not out of spite, out of clarity. Forgiveness didn't mean return. It meant release. Spring came without announcement. One morning, I opened my window and noticed the scent of something green in the air. New leaves, wet earth, the hush before blossom. It was subtle, almost nothing. And yet, it felt like everything. My apartment still wasn't perfect. The faucet still dripped. The bathroom mirror still had a crack running through it like a scar. But the space had become mine in a way that mattered more than aesthetics. It was quiet, honest, uncompromising. Like me. The business was growing. Slowly but steadily. I had hired a virtual assistant, launched a newsletter, and begun mentoring 2 young women starting their careers in data. Some days, I worked until midnight. Other days, I closed my laptop at noon and took long walks with no destination. I no longer measured my worth in productivity or in approval. Dad called once a week. Sometimes we didn't say much, just talked about books or birds he'd seen on his walks. He sounded lighter these days. Less like someone escaping and more like someone arriving. And Mom? She called too. Not often, but when she did, she never asked for anything. She asked about the weather, about the tea I was drinking. Once, she mailed me a hand cream I used to like as a teenager. I didn't call back right away, but I kept it. Forgiveness, I'd come to understand, isn't a single act. It's a choice you make again and again, in quiet moments, when no one's watching. It's a boundary you draw with love, not spite. One afternoon, while reorganizing old documents, I found the first invoice I'd ever sent as an independent consultant. The total was laughable, barely covered groceries, but I held it in my hands for a long time, smiling. That woman, tired, unsure, overworked, she didn't know she'd survive. But I did. And I'd do it all again. Not because I wanted to prove anyone wrong, but because I finally believed, in the deepest marrow of myself, that I deserved a life not built on guilt, or obligation, or someone else's comfort. A life of my own. I stood by the window, watching the late sun touch everything with soft gold. A breeze lifted through the trees, stirring something in me I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Not silence from repression, but the stillness that comes when nothing is chasing you anymore. I made tea. Jasmine. My favorite. Then I sat down, just me, the steam, and the evening light, and let myself be whole.